Okay, so this is clip 4, chapter 2, unemployment. So this is, I'm not talking about cyclical. So cyclical, what is it? Well, here's the definition. It occurs because of a recession or a similar downturn in the business cycle. Okay, so this kind of links into that business cycle stuff. So you can see a good test question being made out of the linking the discussion between unemployment and the discussion about the business cycle, which is also in chapter 2. So this could be a great testing thing. So this is the reason I bring this up is because, I mean, you have to think. You're the students, but think as you're reading this, because I'm the one making up the test questions. Why I want to ask you questions. So this could be a red flag right there, because it links the two, so it brings them together. It synthesizes. Okay. Right. Which again, of course. What are business cycles? The ups and downs of business growth and decline over time. It's that sort of, let's say, almost like a sine curve, kind of going up and down, up and down, up and down over time. And this book says this type of unemployment is the most serious, and that is true. And I'll explain why in a second. Let me just quickly squeeze in the fourth type called seasonal unemployment, because it's kind of the outlier to some extent, trying to classify it in these different systems, because it's sort of it kind of like, what exactly is it? It's sort of, in a sense, a kind of a combination of frictional and cyclical kind of mixed in there together. That's what I mean by it's kind of a outlier, because it's sort of a type, subtype of the other two of the three we just discussed. And basically, seasonal just is sort of like what it sounds like. Right, different seasons, like weather, right? So it means it occurs when the demand for labor varies over the year. For example, as with harvesting of crops, right? So this type of unemployment is going to pop up. Let's say if you're in construction, you're building homes or something, and there's people are, let's say, doing a lot of renovation and construction, let's say in the summer months, but then the cold Canadian winter comes along and no one wants to go outside. So there's maybe a reduction in the number of construction projects going on. Or like you're, let's say, fishing, and then all of a sudden the lake freezes up, so now you can't drive your boat around, kind of thing. Okay, so that's basically those four. Now let me talk a little bit more about cyclical, and then because that's what I really want to get at. This one's really important. Where did I write this down? Okay, cyclical, also called a deficit in demand unemployment, occurs in a recessionary gap. Okay, I mean, remember, an economic depression is just a severe recession that just won't go away. Okay, so there's when you start talking recession, depression, this is bad. Like you don't want these things. Okay, because of this. And basically, this is basically what is called an involuntary unemployment. Okay, remember, take frictional, for example, right? Saying, I go to my job, I hate my boss, I quit. That's voluntary unemployment. You voluntarily said, I'm going, bye-bye. Cyclical basically means you really are being thrown out on the street. That's what involuntary means. You don't have choice. No one's saying, would you like to be unemployed, Neil? No, they're just saying goodbye, au revoir. It's over. So you don't really choose this. Okay, so this occurs again when the national income is below its potential income. That's just another fancy way of saying a recession. Okay, so what do I want to tell you? Yeah, there's a sort of this important distinction. So I'm just going to read this to you. It says, what happens when you have zero cyclical unemployment? Okay, so when cyclical unemployment is zero, so there doesn't exist, the number of unfilled jobs currently available is equal to the number of persons unemployed. Okay, so there's 100 people unemployed and there are 100 jobs to fill. That's part of the reason why they call frictional unemployment search unemployment. You have to sort of, the person searching around to get that job that matches up with their skills, kind of thing. That's why it's also to carry on with this zero cyclical unemployment scenario, it says at that point, all the existing unemployment is either structural or functional, right? And the rate of unemployment is the NAIRU, this natural rate of unemployment. This is basically the why you can't have zero unemployment, right? This is why. If you're always going to have structural unemployment, pretty much. I mean, there's always going to be situations where, you know, the world is changing. So now let's say the demand for labor is we want everyone to have, you know, master's degrees. Well, it takes time for people, you know, to maybe get those skill levels. So there's a mismatch between supply and demand. So there's always going to be structural unemployment. And same with frictional. People are always going to flip out on their bosses. People are always going to graduate from university, and they're going to enter the labor market. Okay? You know, people are going to, you know, stay home and raise their kids. I mean, that's just human nature. So there's always going to be frictional. There's always going to be structural. Okay? And that's fine. That's basically why the natural rate of unemployment, the NAIRU, is always going to be positive. It's going to be greater than 0%. Okay, that's why you can't go drive it down to zero. It's just not possible. Okay, and there you go. If someone argues that they think they can, you can attack them and say, no, it's not reasonable to expect. It's sort of idealistic, utopian. I mean, it would be great if everyone always permanently had a job and was happy, but it's just probably not going to happen in market economy. Okay, so that's basically that. So what they're saying is, okay, we're always going to have seasonal. I'm sorry, take that back. We're always going to have this structural, and we're always going to have this the other one. We're always going to have structural and frictional unemployment. Okay, that's sort of taken for granted. But now, if it goes even further than that, right? Now we're talking cyclical. So it's sort of now we're actually it's in addition to this, right? Because look what they're saying. When there's zero cyclical, right? The number of unfilled jobs currently available is equal to the number of persons unemployed. So what they're saying is 100 people are looking for a job, and there are 100 jobs that need to be filled. Okay? So that's why we just have to make the match, connect it all up. When we start getting to cyclical unemployment, now we're saying that there's only 100 jobs that need to be filled, but 900 people running around trying to fill them. Now we have a serious problem. Now we have people on the streets can't get a job. They're in soup kitchens to eat themselves, to eat food, not eat themselves, to eat food, right? That someone's going to give them. Okay, and so that's why it's such a bad thing. Okay, so we really want to avoid that. Okay, if possible. And finally, just quickly in the last minute here. Then I have one more clip I want to make for you. Seasonal. Seasonal is basically this idea that the labor force, how is it defined? It's a type of aggregate unemployment that's associated with a level of aggregate demand insufficient to provide enough jobs for the entire labor force during a particular season. Right? So this is actually viewed as sort of like kind of a bit of a frictional unemployment, and demand deficient or cyclical unemployment, right? Because it's sort of like frictional because it's sort of like temporary layoffs, which is considered to be a part of the frictional. Okay. And it's also to some extent cyclical because it's, you know, there's just not enough work at the time, so people are sitting around not doing anything. Okay, so that's that, and now I'm going to come back and talk about this NAIRU stuff in a little more detail.